Stephen, you actually, I believe, were in Texas when Juneteenth was declared a holiday in that state, which is the first place that's sort of where Juneteenth originates because, and for those who don't know, Emancipation Proclamation signed by Lincoln in 1863, but 2 years later, 1865, Union Major General Gordon Granger arrived on the island of Galveston, Texas, to enforce the emancipation of slaves and oversee a peaceful transition of power. Which I think what Maggie was speaking about earlier, when we were talking about, is these fools were carrying on as if slavery was still legal and the South hadn't lost. Like, they needed a Union Army soldier to come in and enforce that shit because they just weren't going to obey it.
Well, we do got to keep in mind that when Lincoln kind of freed us, quote unquote, that the war was still going on. And it's the idea that slave owners would not take the word of the president and say, "Oh, damn, I'm sorry, y'all be free." That makes sense to me, by the way. I jokingly say that actually I was in Texas, started in 1974, and we actually had a black plebiscite over which should be the holiday, my birthday or Juneteenth, and I lost. And so instead of my birthday being the national holiday, it's Juneteenth. But seriously though, my folks from Alabama, and they met in Chicago, and I was born in Chicago. And Juneteenth was not a thing in Chicago. And it's really, really Texas specific. And I say it because my thought of Juneteenth is kind of like two different minds. On the one hand, the idea that we mean the country, recognize that slavery ended, which implies it was wrong, by the way, is a good thing to do. And we should celebrate that sort of acknowledgement. But I also look at things through the lens of building power in social movements. And social movements are most effective when they're deeply rooted, where people kind of feel something deeply, and they want to run through the brick wall for the change. And because of the particularities around Juneteenth in Texas, it's deeply felt in Texas. But in reality, in other parts of the South, they had other emancipation days because there are other days that slaves were freed. And it had deeply roots there as well. And my concern is that to the extent we have a holiday that has some deep roots, but on serious deep roots, it minimizes the power we're going to have, Francesca. That's my concern. And we get into, it's a holiday like MLK, I got two black holidays. It's cool now, right? And doesn't we talk about how do we build power to change the world? So it's really important both to reinforce the idea that slavery was evil, and we're going to acknowledge that it was evil. It was also important to go beyond just the day and go beyond kind of, oh, that's the past, and examine how you build power to fight capitalism and racism today.
Maggie, what are your thoughts on that? The symbolism versus is there a better holiday? Like, is there one where we're like, yeah, this one is about struggle? I'm going to give Maggie a second.
I mean, I feel like it's to try to pinpoint what would be the best possible day or what would be the best possible time to commit Black struggle. Like, for me personally, I don't know that we need to find a specific, I'm a kind of a pick one and let's go with it kind of person, Black people have struggled a lot. Like, we've gone through a lot. Let's just, that's just me personally. I'm not, I don't have a specific day in mind
But it's similar to the conversation that you were talking about, the way that statues get erected and, immediately, it's fun to see, Robert E. Lee's statue get completely graffitied over. And then I think the liberal conversation is well, who should we put up instead? And there is a part of my aesthetic brain that's I would like to see, Sojourner Truth or, somebody a better statue, or someone up there. But then it is so vapid. It is so it's so thin. And what Stephen's saying, and I agree with that, is it isn't about the actual work and the struggle and actually making change. We are in a moment where even the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which is minimal, it is not the revolutionary or even I wouldn't even call it transformative, but it is a minimal federal legislation that does minimal things when it comes to an out of control police force. Even we can't get that shit passed. Yeah.
Francesca, let me put
And
another
I do
example.
agree that it seems really performative, especially since like nothing else is like Juneteenth is not going to change anything. If you want a day to commemorate Black struggle, you know, go for it. But like, it's not fixing anything. It's not helping Black struggle. It's not like ameliorating any of the issues that are, you know, leading to people wanting to make it a performative gesture.
Right.
I think it's important to recognize that things have less performative elements to it, or less symbolic, with actual power driving it. And to the extent there's not a lot of power driving something, it becomes more symbolic. It's easy to become quickly to become a performative stance. Let me give you an example. So I was in Houston doing some organizing, kind of got out of college, kind of crazy, good old days of the 60s and 70s. Let's go change the world. And I was working in a factory in Houston. And this is before they actually had a state holiday in Texas on Juneteenth. But because of the depth of the energy there that Black folks felt, people actually organized a walkout in the factory on Juneteenth. That we didn't have to have a contract union holiday. We didn't have to have a state holiday. We said, fuck it, we're out of here. And that sort of power gives things really substance there. And to the extent that that doesn't exist, then quickly we get into, we need a better holiday. We need a better statute. Instead of saying what drives folk to change their behavior, to work together to change the world.
Yeah. Yeah, having I mean, I think it's a little bit of also the bottom up versus the top down type thing, you know, like I think the bottom up when it comes to racial justice in this moment is, like I'm saying, a real cry for real reform, if not abolition of the criminal justice of policing, right? And that's the bottom. That would be the bottom up win. We got a top down win, and that's still, it can be exciting, but yeah, we need more bite behind it. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. And while you're here, why don't you just subscribe to this channel? I promise it'll be good.